Obvio. Obvio que lo voy a jugar. Lo estoy esperando. ¿Desde cuándo? ¿Desde el año pasado? Sí, el director del juego, yo no sé, uno de los directores gráficos, no sé, se puso a hablar un chorro de estupideces. A decir un montón de cosas que no tenía que decir. En Twitter. Ex. Nada, yo espero que no haya arruinado el juego. Le cerraron, by the way, el Twitter. El ex. Para que no siga escribiendo sandeces. Vamos a ver esto. Ya falta cuánto aproximadamente para que salga Avowed. Estamos hablando que alrededor de 16 horas. Ponle 12. Sería a las 10 de la mañana. Más 3 más. Sería las 12, 1 de la tarde aquí. Wow. Yo salgo de trabajar a las 4:30. Mañana vamos a jugar. Mañana vamos a jugar. Avowed. Vamos a ver esto.
On the heels of an insect-filled survival game and a 2D detective story straight out of the 16th century that were pleasantly surprising departures from what developer Obsidian does best, Avowed is a return to that traditional action RPG comfort food we know and love.
Nice, par de
Set in the fantasy
combito.
universe of Pillars of Eternity, this is a game that's filled with all my favorite RPG cliches.
I'm sure you've diffused more complicated situations.
Este juego
Like
parece
standing
que
around a camp-
lo que lo hace cool es que apela a la nostalgia. A este corillo de gente como yo, que sí se criaron jugando Elder Scroll, este estilo de juego Fable y todos estos juegos así RPG bien cáscara que empezaron bien mierda. Porque, para que ustedes tengan una idea, si tú vas a jugar Fable ahora, te vas a dar cuenta que eso es senda basura y que en verdad tenía un montón de cosas malas que podían mejorar. Pero en fin, yo creo que nunca ha existido el videojuego perfecto. Sí, el videojuego que decimos, día 3 es el mejor de todo lo que hemos jugado, pero yo creo que esto apela a lo que es la nostalgia.
With my
Vamos a ver
party
esto.
members to
A ver
exchange
qué
dark
tal.
backstories
Yo creo
and
que ya
unresolved traumas,
mismo le llego yo.
Strange to me.
and looting every single slain enemy before their corpse has even begun to cool. Per Obsidian's pedigree, the writing, world building, and open world maps are all quite good, and running around lobbing deadly spells at reanimated skeletons
Nice.
and violent lizard folk to claim shiny new gear is as
El combate
entertaining as
se
you
ve
might
nice,
expect,
se ve
if not
fluido,
exactly
rápido.
breaking new ground.
Se
That's
siente
a bit
cool.
of a trend, actually.
Se ve
Avowed
cool.
draws so much from
Asumo
the
que se
Skyrims
siente
and Dragon Ages
tan
of
cool
the
como se
past
ve.
that it ends up an overall
Nice.
unsurprising adventure that has few distinctive ideas to call its own.
Many years ago, you were born to a family in Ardirian Empire.
Si tú has jugado el del Scroll, tú quieres jugar esto. Skyrim, tú quieres jugar esto. Fable, tú quieres jugar esto. The Witcher, you wanna play
As both the
this.
chosen godlike imbued with magical powers and the envoy of the Emperor, your character is granted a downright irresponsible amount of authority to do whatever you please. And you're just
Vamos a hacer lo que nos da la gana.
dispatched to
Nos
the
dieron la
wild continent
autoridad.
of the living lands to put an end
Eso-
to a
eso es una de las
mysterious
cosas que
plague
me-
of
que me
madness
gusta.
called the Dream
Que también
Scourge.
puede
There's no big hurry though,
hacer
so
lo
you
que te da
can
la
also
gana.
find time to aid any person on the
Se ve
street
lindo,
who
by the
asks
way.
you for help
La
with
animación.
whatever personal problem they
Looks
might
good.
have.
Come back when you've dealt with them, and make sure you get their leader, too.
You'll spend your days delving into ruined yet beautiful caves, sewers, and forgotten places
Nice.
in search of loot and
Dungeons.
XP while taking
Nice.
every opportunity to wail on beasts and ne'er-do-wells with swords, bows, and spells.
Nice.
Yes, this is basically the premise of every Western RPG for the past several decades, but that's because it's a formula that works reliably. Avowed executes almost every aspect of it quite well.
Nice, ese chill.
This is especially true of the dialogue and story, which is without question the
Tenemos
thing
chill.
Avowed
Nice.
does best, unraveling the mystery
Ay, chill.
of the fungal dream scourge and the otherworldly
Nice.
forces at play is a journey well worth seeing to its conclusion, especially since your decisions can have a profound impact on how things end up. Granted, most of the twists and
Uy.
turns that Avowed's plot sets up become
La
pretty
historia se ve que va a
apparent
estar
well
cool.
before your character and their companions become aware of them, which is a bit disappointing given the Pillars of Eternity series' track record for wild revelations that took me by surprise.
Looks more like a curse to me.
Even so, the story kept the adventure
La animación se ve nice. No voy a mentir. La animación se ve excelente.
You're running full steam the whole time, especially with interesting choices to make to keep you company along the way. In my case, that took
Did you
50
kill those
hours,
soldiers?
but that was kind of a completion.
55 horas para terminar esto. Puedo jugar 100. Con eso está bien, ¿verdad? 100 yo creo que están bien. Yo me atrevo.
You could burn through it in half that time.
Really? I wouldn't know what to do with that much encouragement.
Bantering alongside your 4 companions is especially delightful. Each of them brings their own opinions, personal problems for you to untangle,
Me gusta tener un corillito así en
and
Knights of
cool
the Old
combat
Republic.
and
Nice.
puzzle-solving abilities to rely upon while exploring the living lands.
En Knights of the Old Republic tú tenías un
Hanging
corillito
out with Kai
y tú seleccionabas el team que querías contigo, pero mientras ibas haciendo la historia y las misiones y según cómo tú fueras actuando en la historia, ya fuera light side o dark side, tu equipo iba a reaccionar a eso. Y en verdad,
the sarcastic
los endings
reptilian
eran
mercenary
maravillosos.
with
Knights
a
of the Old
fondness
Republic
for
fue
woodworking is rarely dull.
Hacho, OG.
Almost does sound like a punishment.
And bringing the furry, cat-like, and relentlessly horny mage Yatzli along will almost guarantee you won't have to go very long without some choice innuendos.
What? Out of breath already?
Okay.
Talk to one of the
Diversity.
boys. See if they can help with your stamina, dear.
Sadly, she's just a tease. You can't actually romance any of them, and the social links you
Nice.
can develop are fairly shallow. That's not crucial or anything, but it seems
Nice.
like a missed opportunity for a relatively easy win. It's otherwise great at building camaraderie with your eclectic found family, and even a fade to black sexy time scene can give you something to remember an RPG playthrough by.
No mezclemos el trabajo con el romance. Aquí vinimos a una misión, a volvernos fuertes y a buscar nuestra loot. ¿Ok?
Just saying.
Vamos a eso.
And let me tell you,
By the way,
waking up in a cold sweat
el
does
romance de
nothing for my
Cyberpunk
fur.
con
When you
Panam.
aren't chatting up the locals,
Ese
you'll
main
probably
quest,
be sending
nice.
them back to the wheel for reincarnation
Si
via
juegan
Avowed's
Cyberpunk,
tumultuous
aventuras.
combat.
Hay bosses. Nice. Bosses.
You'll face off against the usual baddies, from typical fantasy creatures and animals
Si no hay
to
skeletons,
creepy wraiths and people
no
driven
es
to
un
madness
RPG.
by
Si
the
no hay
Dream Scourge.
skeletons.
Fighting with melee weapons and magic feels smoother and more competent than it does in many similar fantasy RPGs. But
Eso es
evading
lo que yo
dozens
estaba
of
hablando.
enemies as they
Literalmente
charge
la
through
magia en
sickly
este juego
marshes
se ve
and
mucho más
barren
fluida
deserts isn't as easy
que
as it
el del
looks.
scroll.
I
Mira
spent
cómo
most
se
of my
ve,
time
¿sabe?
playing as a squishy wizard
I wanna be
who
a
had
fucking
little in the way of
mage.
protection,
I wanna
and
be
had
a
to do my
fucking
best to
mage.
keep my
Miren
distance,
eso.
quick dodge like a champ, and rain down as many high-powered spells as I
Damn,
could to keep them
nigga.
at bay. I'm especially fond of how this one turns enemies into floating piñatas, and this one just zaps everybody in a big area.
Dime que no.
Alternatively, there are more
I wanna be a mage. Puedo tener escudo también y ser mago. Se puede. Mañana lo sabremos.
martial character build options that require more blocking, stabbing, and making use of power attacks to break the enemy's guard.
Ah.
And each of these has their own skill trees that let you do
Hacho,
neat
se ve
things,
nice. Este
like smack
jueguito
enemies
promete,
onto
este
their
jueguito
backs with
promete.
a powerful ramming attack. As someone
What
who
the?
insists on playing on the hardest difficulty on my first run, I definitely found myself knocked on my butt more than a few times, and accidentally stumbling into an area that I wasn't properly leveled for was quite humbling, but it was never insurmountable.
Ya lo como
My biggest
rompe el
issue with
spell.
combat is in the variety of
madre!
opponents. For the vast majority of my 50-hour completion,
La magia se ve
I
demasiado.
found myself fighting the same handful of enemy types everywhere I ventured, and almost none of them are interesting or unique in their behaviors to begin with. There's, of course, skeletons in need of re-killing, oversized spiders that spit gunk at you, and bears. Oh
Bienvenido
my.
al mundo de los RPG. Te vas a
Just
encontrar
as an
mucho
aside,
monstruo.
by God, there are so many bears
Es
in this
solamente
world.
que sean
Even
más
when it
fuertes y
doesn't
más
really
loot.
make any sense for them to be here, they throw
Real.
a few bears into the mix. Why are there
Lo que hace de estos juegos divertidos es el exploration. Llegar a los sitios, un par de peleas y seguimos.
two of them sitting around a campfire with bandits? What are they? The pets? They've got two pet bears? Okay. Anyway, after a few hours, the novelty of fighting these humdrum fantasy baddies and my interest in squaring off against them diminished. Every once in a while, something big, scary, and unexpected would arrive and make me remember how to defeat a non-bear opponent, but these welcome surprises are too few and far between.
vamos literalmente a explorar, a tratar de explorar cada rincón de este
Thankfully,
mapita.
there's plenty more to do and see while exploring
Nice.
each of
Me gusta
Avowed's
conocer los
4
sitios.
substantial open-world hubs, each filled with side quests to complete, minor puzzles to
Eso
solve,
es,
hidden
side quests.
chests to loot,
Give me side
and
quests.
people to talk
Loot!
smack to.
More.
Before we use your bones to make Petro a new cage.
It's a structure that resembles the Outer
Cualquier
Worlds'
adicto al
separate
loot
planets.
va a amar este
None of
juego.
the maps are especially big, but they make great use of the space they have, and they're all
Nice.
delightfully colorful and
Se ve
brimming
lindo.
with personality.
Yo quiero
It's a
llegar a
welcome
ver.
change from the sometimes drab and dull places
Que ya mismo
we end
viene
up
por ahí
exploring in other RPGs.
Elden
There's also a
Scroll.
surprising amount of uneven
Elden Scroll,
terrain,
Elden Ring.
since Avowed really seems to want you to engage with its parkour system that lets you mantle up ledges and do some minor platforming to
Nice.
reach hidden
Parkour.
places. You won't be wall running or swinging from poles like you find in Dying Light, but it's still a nice touch that gives you something else to do when you're exploring the living lands.
Tienes parkour.
However,
Nice.
while these maps are great to explore the first time you go through them, they don't give you many reasons to stick around or run through again since enemies never respawn. This is a blessing insofar as you don't have to retread the same areas to fight monsters and bears that have arbitrarily reappeared, but it also means any backtracking is completely devoid of life. They're empty to the point where I felt extremely pressured to move on to the next zone as soon as
Probablemente eso
possible
lo arreglen.
because it felt as if the cleanup crew was going to show up to break down the set and remove the furniture at any moment. Here's a clip of me walking across an entire map without encountering a single enemy. Yet if there's one thing that impressed me the most about Avowed, it's the fact that across my 50 plus hours with it on Xbox Series X, I encountered almost no glitches or technical issues worth mentioning. There was one
De corazón. Hagan que responen. Cada tanto. Como Elden Ring. Vira, pum, pum, y vuelven y salen.
time
Sería
where
bueno.
I unwittingly killed an optional boss before
Sería
accepting
bueno.
the quest to hunt it down.
Se los
Another where
recomiendo.
my compass wouldn't tell me where to go
Va a
for
hacer
the
que el
next
juego
part of
sea
the main
mucho más
story,
divertido.
And sometimes I'd see odd polygons popping in and out while exploring the world. But I can count the number of times these things happened on one hand, and I didn't experience a single crash even once during my entire time playing. That's all but unprecedented for this genre, and an extremely welcome surprise.
No encontré un glitch. Wow. That's
With
insane.
awesome world building and stellar character writing, Avowed reminds me why I fell in love with Obsidian RPGs in the first place. However, the bigger picture is that it plays it quite safe, with a by-the-numbers fantasy adventure that's more familiar than evolutionary, and there's barely any enemy variety to keep its swords and sorcery battles interesting for long. Even if it doesn't swing for the fences or leave a memorable mark on the genre, though, it's
Vamos a
still
ver.
perfectly competent with all the tried and true stuff I expect,
Se ve
including
bien
chaotic
un
combat, leveling
RPG
systems,
old
and a
school.
loot progression
Un Elder
that
Scroll,
lets you
pero
build the
mucho
kind
mejor
of
el
character you
combate.
want to play, and meaningful decisions that can have a massive impact on the world. Plus, the whole thing's surprisingly technically stable compared to its reliably unreliable peers. I enjoyed my time parkouring my way through Eora, and think you will too. Just don't expect Avowed to show you anything you haven't seen before. For more, check out our
Aquí tienen su veredicto. Un 7. Un 7 es un buen juego. No voy a mentir. Vamos a estar jugándolo. Vamos a ver qué tal. Esta próxima semana les dejaré saber cómo me fue. Creo que lo único malo que puedo decir de todo este review es que hay ciertas áreas que los bosses no respondían. Y eso podría ser un poquito malo. Pero nada, vamos a ver qué tal. Corillo, no jueguen Path of Exile 2. No he podido dormir. No he podido descansar. He estado trabajando mi build una y otra vez sin parar. Honestamente, uno de los juegos más adictivos que he jugado. Nada, corillo, los veo.